Good afternoon, one and all. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah,
Yes,
please proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, one and all. I'm going to present the case of neuroregression here. We're going to see about Master Shakti Saran, who is a 4-year-old male child, who is firstborn of non-consanguineous married parents, an informant his mother, whose reliability is good. Child was a developmentally normal child and now brought with complaints of inability to walk for past 3 months and inability to speak for past 2 months and cough for the past 1 month. And history of presenting illness, this 4-year-old male child who was apparently normal 3 months back, now brought with history of inability to walk. It was initially noted by the mother to have reduced activity and frequent falls while walking, followed by progressive loss of ability to walk and inability to stand or sit without support. The child is able to lie on a bed and able to roll over, but unable to get up independently from bed, but able to lift off neck with some difficulty. The child is able to turn head sideways and able to reach for objects even above head, but unable to hold firmly a tumbler or a pen when offered. The child was able to move the limbs actively and there was no paucity of movements noted. It was not associated with pain or swelling anywhere in the limbs. And there is no history of any tone abnormalities as noted by mother, such as increase in tone while changing diapers or bathing. No history of floppiness noted while handling the baby. No history of abnormal postures or contractures. No history of any involuntary movements. History of inability to speak for the past 2 months, which was initially noted by mother to have decreased in the number of words he was speaking, and now he is unable to speak even a single word. And he responds only by making sounds and gestures. And there's no history of seizures or emotional disturbances or sleep disturbances. And the child is able to perceive smell. There is no history of any visual disturbances, no history of any abnormal movement of the eye or conjugate deviation of eyes. And the child is able to chew and perceive sensations over face, and no history of deviation of jaw while chewing, and no deviation of angle of mouth, and able to close eyes while asleep. And no history of any hearing disturbances, and no history of any exaggerated response to sounds. History of difficulty in swallowing with regurgitation of feeds for the past 1 month, and there is pooling of secretions, and the tone of the sound has also reduced. And he is able to turn neck, head, and sideways, and there is no deviation of tongue. The child was able to perceive sensations such as hot, cold, pain, or touch, and no history of persistent non-healing ulcers or wasting. No history of tremors on reaching for objects or dysmetria or hypotonia. There is history of bladder and bowel incontinence noted for the past 1 month. Initially, he was able to indicate the urge to void, but now he is not indicating the urge to void, and that is not associated with increasing frequency or retention of urine. And there is no history of constipation, no history of excessive sweating. And there is history of cough, which is wet for the past 1 month, but it is not associated with fever, tachypnea, or breathing difficulty. There is no diurnal or postural variations. And there is history of poor weight gain for the past 1 month. There is no history of fever or loose stools or vomiting, which was recurrent, or ear discharge or any skin rashes so far. No history of any headache or projectile vomiting. No history of abdominal distension or icterus. No history of abnormal pigmentation of skin or any skin or hair changes. No history of reduced head size or increasing head size or any abnormal face is noted. No history of any abnormal odor in the urine.
Sivaranjini?
Ma'am?
So this, you say that this is the case of neuronal regression. So
Yes,
whenever there is a neuronal regression, you give importance to speech, vision, hearing, and locomotion. Either it becomes regression and it is also progressive in the deterioration, right?
Yes.
So you told there is abnormality in the speech.
Yes, ma'am.
But if there is speech, according to you, you were not very clear how there was the regression of the speech. Because whether then you suddenly told there is reduced in the volume of the speech, that is the tone is reduced. So can you be more specific in how the speech deterioration was there? Because this child is 4 years old, right?
Yes.
Can you?
Initially, the child was able to recite poems or sing songs and all, ma'am. And further, then there was a decline, and even in the number of words, which was noted by the mother. And further,
Okay.
but he was able to do anything which the mother commands, but he was not able to speak in return, ma'am. Now he is not able to speak even a single word. Only he makes gestures by sounds, ma'am.
So he is not able to speak even a single word.
No, ma'am.
Initially, he was even recite a poem.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the age of onset?
3 years, 9 months, ma'am.
3 years, 9 months. So how is the age of onset is important regarding neuronal regression syndromes?
Depending on the age, we can just divide them into less than 2 years, or 2 to 5 years, or more than 5 years, ma'am. If they're less than 2 years, we have this neuronal regression caused by Gaucher's, Niemann, Pick's, and
So
Alexander.
whether you can say whether it is probably a white matter or a gray matter, depending upon the age of onset, or we only with the symptoms.
Only with the symptoms we can.
So we are now at the end of the presentation. So
Yes.
and one another thing I want to say, ask whether there is any history of seizures.
No history of seizures.
Mentioned that. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And how was the feeding difficulty? Can you elaborate on that?
Ma'am, there was regurgitation of feeds only, ma'am, and pooling of secretions, and he was taking much time to feed initially.
That means there was difficulty in swallowing, or
Yes, ma'am.
there was the
Difficulty in
incoordination and aspiration.
Yes, ma'am.
What, both?
Ma'am, there was difficulty in swallowing, ma'am, and after that there was pooling of secretions, and there was while feeding he had cough also, and regurgitation of each feed, ma'am.
Was there any problem with hearing and of course locomotion is now bedridden,
Yes,
is not moving anywhere? And how was the locomotor regression noticed?
Ma'am, the child was able to climb upstairs and downstairs without support, ma'am, initially. But now the mother noticed he was initially he was falling while walking, and after that he was only lying on the bed, and he was not even able to stand, and then not able to sit even with support, ma'am. Now he's only bedridden, and he's able to turn roll over only, ma'am.
Any problem with hearing?
No, ma'am. He's responding to mother's voice also.
Yes, Dr. Lima, anything more you want to add in this presentation?
Let her continue, ma'am. Let her continue so that at the end of the history we will discuss each by each. We will analyze the symptoms.
Yes, okay. Continue, Sivaranjani.
Yes, ma'am. In past history, there is no history of seizures or intractable vomiting requiring hospitalization in the past. There is no history of any chronic drug intake, no history of trauma or recent vaccination. And antenatal history, the mother was a 27-year-old primey who was booked and immunized and taken iron folic acid tablets.
Normal, doctor?
Yes,
antenatal period is normal?
It's normal.
Next.
Skip that.
And natal and postnatal history, that baby was a term AJ male baby, was born by normal vaginal delivery, had smooth neonatal transition, no history of any feeding difficulty or seizures or vomiting or any sensorium disturbances. And developmental history, pre-illness, the child was a developmentally normal child, had gross motor.
Appropriate for that age?
Yes, ma'am, appropriate for age, ma'am.
Next.
At present, the child is having only rolling over, and he is not even able to sit with support. Developmental age of 5 months, which is developmental quotient of 11%. And fine motor, the child is able to reach for objects and changes from one hand to another. The developmental age is 6 months, and DQ of 13%. And the child is able to recognize mother, and seizure anxiety is present, and he's not able to feed on self, and is unable to indicate the need for maturation or defecation. And the developmental age is 6 months, so the DQ of 13%. And language is able to produce only sounds where there is reciprocal babbling, and there's no not even a single word. The developmental age is 8 months, and the DQ is 17%. And nutritional history, the child was exclusively breastfed till 6 months of age, and complementary feeding was started at 6 months and continued breastfeeding till 2 years of age. And the child takes a calorie of 880 kilocalories against 1360 kilocalories, has a deficit of 35%, and protein of 12 grams against 12.8 grams, and has a deficit of 6.5%. The diet is poor in micronutrients, and child takes non-veg once in 2 weeks. And child is immunized up to age according to URP schedule, and there's BCG scar present. And there is no history of any similar illness in the family members. There is no history of seizures or developmental delay or sudden death in the family members. And socioeconomic history, the family belongs to upper lower class according to modified Pukaswamy scale. And family lives in a Pakka house, and uses LPG for cooking purposes, and has separate toilet facility and no open air defecation. And the nearest health facility was within a kilometer. And there is no history of contact with a known case of tuberculosis patient. In summary, this 4-year-old male child who is firstborn of non-consanguinity, was a developmentally normal child with normal neonatal period, was immunized up to age with no significant family history, has poor nutrition and belonging to upper lower class according to modified Kuppaswamy scale, was apparently normal 3 months back, now brought with history suggestive of quadriparesis in the form of inability to walk or stand or sit for the past 3 months, with history suggestive of motor aphasia in the form of inability to speak for the past 2 months, and bladder and bowel incontinence noted for the past 1 month, and 9th and 10th cranial nerve involvement in the form of difficulty in feeding with regurgitation of feeds for the past 1 month, and poor weight gain noted for the past 1 month, and cough for the past 1 month, probably an LRA due to aspiration.
Yes, doctor. So you have 3 or 4 problems for this particular child. So
Yes.
kindly analyze each and everything. So first instance, you said the child is previously a neurologically and a developmentally normal child for 3 months ago, and now started losing the acquired milestone. Is it not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So first of all, and whether it is progressive or not.
Ma'am, it is progressive.
Okay, very good. So there is a this is a child who had a normal milestones, now losing the acquired milestones. Number 1. Number 2, it is progressive. These are the 2 important points you have to consider. Now coming to the symptom analysis. What are the problems the child is having? Child is having a quadriparesis. Initially, you said the child used to walk normally and started difficulty in walking with frequent falls. Can you tell me what are the causes for frequent falls in a child? A child can fall while walking because of what are the reasons? Can you?
Yes, neurological, muscular. Don't get stuck.
Any,
You, 2 PGs are there, no? The other PG?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, Deepak, you can
any
answer.
muscular causes, myopathy,
Okay.
or any joint, any pain due to
See,
pain.
whenever there is a proximal, say a child can walk, a child can fall due to a quadriceps weakness, that is due to a buckling of knees, or due to tripping of toes, which can be due to a distal weakness. Okay, that is number 1. Number 2, there can be increased spasticity. Because of that, while walking, there can be a scissoring of limbs. Because of that, a child can fall. And if it is a extrapyramidal movement disorder, also a child can fall. Apart from that, due to unsteadiness while walking, that is ataxia, that also can cause a child to fall. Beyond all these things, there can be due to seizures. What are the 2 types of seizures in which there can be a fall?
Atonic seizures.
Very good. Another one is myoclonic seizures. Okay. So you have to consider whenever a child falls while walking, all these conditions, and think about in which is reasonable to your case. Okay. And you have not told me whether the child had a difficulty in getting up from the sitting position. You said it started in the lower limbs. It was bilateral. It was on the same time. It was the beginning. And whether there was a history of difficulty in getting up from the sitting position. That will tell us whether the child had proximal weakness in the lower limbs, and whether the child had initially, when the child was walking with the support, with the difficulty, with the falls, whether the child had any difficulty in gripping the slippers. That can indicate the child was having a distal weakness. Okay, these 2 things you have to ask. And you have nicely pointed out the child had difficulty in getting up from lying position to sit. So that means there was a trunk muscle weakness. And now you are telling that there is a quadriparesis, but in the history you said the child was able to raise both upper limbs above the shoulders. Is it not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but there was weakness or not?
Weakness was there.
It was not normal, no. So
Not
that's
normal.
why you have, and in the presentation, you said there was no paucity of movements. Whenever you say paucity, that means weakness. Unless otherwise there is a weakness, the person cannot, you cannot have a quadriparesis. Okay. So there must have been a weakness of limb. So you have to mention that there was a weakness of the limb. That is number 1. And now you have come to a conclusion that all the 4 limbs are involved. There is a quadriparesis. Very good. Now, can you tell me whether it is upper motor, and the second one is in the form of, next one is language disturbance. You said that the child had difficulty in speech. Is it a language disturbance, or it is something to do with your motor or articulation of the speech? Whether it is a dysphasia, aphasia, or dysarthria?
The child is not able to.
Dysphasia or aphasia?
The child is not able to produce even some words also, ma'am.
Okay.
Only he is
So
able to make only
difficulty
sound.
in production of the language is called aphasia, dysphasia.
Okay.
Okay. What is dysarthria?
The problem is in the periphery, ma'am. That is the articulation problem.
Articulation, difficulty in articulation of the speech. So there can be due to your muscles which are necessary. That is your palatal muscles or pharyngeal muscles, when they got involved, then you can have those problems. Okay, it's and you said the comprehension was good, the child was recognizing or the child was communicating by gestures. Okay, so you come to a conclusion that it was only a motor aphasia, initially a dysphasia, and so now the child is not even able to utter a single word. So you have come to a conclusion that it was motor aphasia. Is it so?
Yes.
Okay. Then you had bladder and bowel incontinence. Okay, that we have to analyze. And you had some problem with the feeding. Is it not? And
Yes,
now with the history, can you come to a conclusion whether it was a pseudobulbar or bulbar? Or shall we discuss this after the clinical findings?
Ma'am, with history, I couldn't conclude that it is UMN or LMN. Ma'am.
One thing you can ask, my dear, whether there is a difficulty for both solids or liquids. When there is a history of difficulty for both solids and liquids, it is usually bulbar. Whereas in pseudobulbar, child will have difficulty in swallowing liquids, but not solids. Solids, by the way of gravity, they can swallow. Number 2 is emotional incontinence. In which one the emotional incontinence or pathological laughter will be there? UMN. That is pseudobulbar. Okay, that you can ask. Of course, you have told me whether the child had behavioral problems or not. Is it not?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Now tell me what could be the cause for whether it is a UMN lesion or a LMN lesion. And I have to comment upon your other. Go back to your third slide or second slide. There are a lot of technical words. You cannot use technical words in the history. Okay, go back. Let me tell you how you have to say those things. Go back. History of no tone abnormalities. You should say the mother, there was no history of stiffness, either stiffness or flainness of the limbs. Our mother hasn't noticed any stiffness or flainness of the limbs. Okay, this changing of diapers and all will come only when you have to say about the spasticity that in a child with a cerebral palsy. No history of involuntary movements, yes, very good. Seizures, emotional disturbances, yes, very good. Next. All these cranial nerves, what are all the problems or what are all the cranial nerves that can be involved in a particular case? You have to come to a conclusion, not like saying all those things. Able to perceive smell, this and all will be a finding. This is not a history. So you can very well omit these things. You can say the mother did not have any concerns about vision or hearing, or you can say there was no history of visual disturbances. Very good. And able to chew and all, it is all finding. There was no history of deviation of the angle of the mouth. Okay. There was no history of hard of hearing or history of hearing disturbances. Very good. Why did you ask this history of exaggerated response to sounds, my dear?
Exaggerated startle response in taste.
That you can say exaggerated increase sound. Okay, exaggerated response to sound or common sounds like you can give examples also for that. Tone of the sound is also reduced means what do you mean by that, my dear? You mean the voice volume is reduced or
Yes,
a nasal twang you are going to mean? Is it so? Some history of pooling of secretions will come. That and all you can avoid. These are all findings which you have to tell us in the examination. Okay. Next slide. Able to turn neck, that and all you can avoid. There is no history of deviation. Now, do you expect a 12th nerve palsy in this particular child? Those things you can very well avoid. And no history of, you can say no history of sensory disturbances, single line. Okay. And next slide. Now you have to come to a conclusion. Where do you want to place the lesion? Then only you can go for the etiological history. So far the whatever in the previous slides, whatever you have given will guide you where you want to place the lesion or localize the lesion. Then only what could be the lesion. Then only we can ask the etiological history. Now tell me what could be the cause for quadriparsis in this particular child. Is it a UMN or LMN?
UMN.
How do you say there is no history of either stiffness or plainness? Is it not?
Associated.
So it is little bit difficult. Okay. Now let us rule out one by one. Suppose if it is a LMN, where could it be the problem? Could it be the muscle?
No, ma'am.
No. Muscle involvement is usually proximal. Here you have both the proximal as well as a distal weakness. Is it not? Okay. Could it be a neuromuscular junction?
There's no diurnal variation.
No, there is no diurnal variation. There is no history of the fatigability. Okay, very good. Next, could it be a peripheral nerve? No, because peripheral nerve will have bilateral symmetrical distal weakness. Here you have a proximal as well as distal. So it can't be a peripheral nerve also. Could it be anteroconsal? No, because anteroconsal again proximal asymmetrical. So you can very well rule out all these things. Now, could it be a polyradiculopathy? I am telling that it is a Guillain-Barré syndrome. Now the child is still improving, little bit improving, or child is static.
Ascending type.
Only you have to find out from the associated histories. That's how your associated histories or associated positive history is going to help you. Okay. Now coming to the aphasia. Whenever there is an aphasia, so it could be either a quadriparesis level. It could be either in the LMN. If LMN, it could be only a polyradiculopathy, or UMN. In the UMN, where do you want to place the lesion? Either in the spinal cord or in the brain.
In the brain.
In the brain. Why? Why can't it be a high cervical cord lesion? Child is having a quadriparesis. It is symmetrical.
Associated speech.
Very good, very good, very good. So the child is having associated language disturbances. What are all the other points? Do you have any other points to say it is cerebral or it is in the cerebral cortex?
Pseudobulbar palsy.
Pseudobulbar palsy means
feeding in the cortex.
Okay, that is the corticobulbar tracts to the lower cranial nerves are affected. Namely, in this particular case, 9th, 10th cranial nerves are involved. So it must be above the bulba, otherwise called the medulla. Okay, right. Any other thing? If there had been a seizures, that could be an additional point for you. Here you do not have seizures. So because the language function is involved or language disturbances are there, where is the you said it is the motor aphasia or dyslexia. What is the area for motor aphasia?
Broca's area.
Broca's area. Where it is situated?
Inferior frontal.
Of the right hemisphere or the left hemisphere?
Left hemisphere.
Usually left hemisphere in predominantly 85% of the individuals. Okay, so because of the language disturbances, here you can take the lesion higher above. Okay, in the cerebral cortex. Okay, in the cerebral cortex, where do you want? If it had been if it's in the cerebral cortex, again, is it confined to only one lobe? Could it be? No. Because if at all, if it is there into the one side, you should have a hemiparesis only. Here you have a quadriparesis, okay? And again, both upper limbs as well as the lower limbs are affected. And you know the homunculus on the lateral surface of the brain, just above the sylvian fissure, you have that, you correctly said you have the Broca's area. Just behind that, you have the motor area, precentral gyrus, where you have the representation of the face, especially for the tongue, lips, and mouth, then face, then your fingers, then forearm, hand, forearm, arm. On the medial surface of the brain only you have the representation of the lower limb. So to say it is a quadriparesis, it must be a very, very diffuse lesion involving both the sides of the cerebral cortex. Okay, are you now clear? Yes. So now, because of the language disturbances, it can't be in the, if it is not LMN, number one, and number two, and it is only UMN, and it is only in the cerebral cortex, not in the higher cervical cortex. Okay, right. Then now, what could be the lesion? Etiology. Then only you can ask for all these no histories, yes histories. For that only you need to have this onset of the illness and course of the illness. Okay, what about the onset? Is it acute onset or insidious onset?
It is insidious and onset.
Very good. What about the progression? Is it improving or static or worsening or progressive? Progressive.
Progressive.
Oh, very good. So it is progressive. So can it be? There are only 5 or 6 differential diagnoses for neurological cases. Is it congenital?
No, ma'am.
No, the child was pretty normal up to 4 years of age. Okay. Is it infection bar inflammation, demyelination, vascular?
Can be.
No. No, my dear. All these three conditions, infection, inflammation, then your vascular insult, that is a stroke, or it is an ADEM like your demyelination, all these are acute problems. And the child will be improving. So it is not acute problem. So all these conditions are ruled out. Is it as SOL, space occupying lesion?
Symmetrical involvement.
Yes.
And not
Suppose
associated
that
with any
the child
race
had a posterior fossa lesion, SOL, and the child went on to develop a hydrocephalus. Now, because of the increased ICP, the child is having all these things.
Raised ICT features.
There were no raised ICT features. Initially, there were no history suggestive of unsteadiness or something like that. Okay. Anyhow, slow growing SOL also we have to keep. Anything else? Any other etiology? Could it be toxic?
Lead encephalopathy.
Yes, toxins, toxic we have to keep. Okay. Anything else? Could it be nutritional?
Yeah.
Which deficiency you are thinking?
B12 deficiency.
Yes. So toxic, nutritional we have to keep. Then anything else? Could it be a trauma, post-trauma?
Acute trauma.
Again, there was no history of trauma. For that, these
Okay.
and all we have to keep, and then only we can ask for the etiological questions. Okay. Then lastly, could it be degenerative?
Can be.
Can be, because it is an insidious onset and it is a progressive neurological illness. So now we have come to a, we have cornered down. It can't be congenital, it can't be acute problems and all. So we have nearly 3 or 4. It could be a toxic, nutritional, or it could be a degenerative disorder, or it could be a slow growing as well. So keeping all these things in your mind, you have to ask the etiological history. You have nicely asked all those things. And you can tell me, why did you ask all these headache, projectile vomiting? For SOL you have. For abdominal distension, icterus?
So certain neurodegeneration disorders like GM1, GM2 ganglions, Gaucher's.
Abnormal pigmentation of the skin?
Adrenoleukodystrophy presenting as initial presenting as Addison's and then
Even a vitamin B12 deficiency, you can have a pigmentation, no? Hyperpigmentation, no? That also you have to remember. Always the dictum is, before labeling anything as a degenerative disorder, we have to always rule out a treatable condition. We should never miss a treatable condition. Okay. That's why we are including all these things. Very good. And in the first slide, go back to the first slide. One more point I have to tell you. You have said in the second one, the child was able to move the limbs actively. There was no history of positive, no, the last slide. It was not associated with the pain or swelling anywhere in the limbs. Why did you ask this question? You had a weakness of limbs, all 4 limbs. You have said there was no history of pain or swelling anywhere in the limbs. Why? What do you mean by that, and what do you infer from this question? Yes, you know, say.
Any association like Farber's disease?
No, my dear. Whenever there is a weakness, you have to rule out whether it is a pseudo paralysis or a true paralysis. Okay. Whenever the difficulty in moving that particular limb is associated with weakness only, we call it as a true paralysis. And what are the causes for pseudo paralysis? Yesterday you might have attended the class on AFP.
Fractures, arthritis.
Very good. Any acute inflammatory pathology. Okay. So those things, all those things, fracture, sprain, toxic synovitis, septic arthritis, hematoma, hemarthrosis, inguinal adenitis, all those things causes, any injection abscess, all those things causes a painful restriction of movements. That's why you have told all this. Okay. Now you know this significance of this question?
Yes.
Okay, go back. So in the past history, what is important? What is important in the past history?
Any history of any IEMs like intractable vomiting?
Any history of a similar illness before? Because whether this is the first episode or whether this was there earlier also, you have to ask. And recent exanthem as well as recent vaccination, no history of trauma, you were told. Next, anything whether the child had prior to the onset of this illness, any acute problem requiring the child for hospitalization, something like any history suggests of CNS infection?
No, ma'am.
No, very good. And coming to the family history, that is again very, very important, because If there is an affected child, then it means it could be a genetic cause. Okay,
Genetic.
very good. Next. So having come to the conclusion that it could be a neurodegenerative disorder, and the duration is only point I am worried is this is only for the past 2 or 3 months only. So to say it is a neurodegenerative disorder, then it should the duration should be a little longer, and within 3 months the child has become bed bound. Is it not? Previously walking child.
Yes.
That is the only issue I am having. And so thinking that it is an probable neurodegenerative disorder or a neuroregression, what are the conditions that come under pseudo regression, or some of the conditions we have already discussed. Tell me what are the conditions that will come under pseudo regression.
Infections like TB meningitis can present like this.
Any chronic meningoencephalitis or chronic infections. Very good. Next.
And
Any other thing? Only tuberculosis meningitis? Anything else?
HIV encephalopathy.
Okay.
And
herpes, CMV, all those things can cause chronic meningoencephalitis. Okay. Of course, CMV in an immunocompromised individual. Yes. Anything else?
SOL.
Slow growing
Hydrocephalus.
You said some vitamin deficiencies you told, no?
B12 deficiency.
B12 deficiency. Then heavy metal poisoning. You were telling about lead, mercury. So heavy metal poisoning. Anything else that can cause a pseudo regression?
Yes, post-epileptic encephalopathy.
Very good. Epileptic encephalopathy. Okay. Don't say post. Epileptic encephalopathy. Name some of the syndromes that will come under epileptic encephalopathy, which you know of fast.
Early infantile epileptic encephalopathy. Early
Ohtahara syndrome. Yes. EME. Yes. West syndrome, Lennox-Gastaut. Okay. West syndrome, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and you have Dravet syndrome. These are all you must know. Okay. And Rasmussen encephalitis, and all these conditions are called epileptic encephalopathies. Very good. Anything else in the pseudo regression? We have told about TBI, no? Traumatic brain injury. Suppose a child had undergone TBI, and the child will be would have lost all the milestones, from which the child may be in a static condition or maybe slightly improving. Another one is post CNS infection sequelae. Anything else? Slow viral infections. You have told about HIV encephalopathy. Any other slow viral infection? Any other thing which can have this motor as well as cognitive decline? From your history, it is not only a motor decline, there have been a cognitive decline also, is it not? Yes, you have told me about that in the developmental milestone. Previous development was appropriate for that age group, and now the child has in all the domains you have told me, and all the 4 domains are involved. So there has been a cognitive decline also. So any other illness which is common in our part of the country, in our country, and of course in our SAARC countries also. If I give you a clue, then you will immediately say myoclonic jerks.
Post measles SSP.
Yes, SSP. Say SSP. Okay. Yes. So these are the conditions we have to think about or consider a pseudo regression before branding this child. And of course, last but not the least is primary psychiatric illness. Okay. But in this child, we will not think about primary psychiatry. Okay. So these are the conditions you have to remember before proceeding further.
Madam, what is the diagnosis you just now mentioned? We couldn't hear properly.
Yeah, primary psychiatric illness, sir.
Okay, psychiatric. Okay, yeah. I couldn't hear it properly.
Thank you, sir. Proceed, my dear.
On examination,
at this point of time, you have 3 or 4 diagnoses. So it could be a chronic infection, it could be a toxic or bar nutritional, or it could be a neurodegenerative disorder. Suppose if you consider this as a neurodegenerative disorder, whether it is a white matter disease or a gray matter disease?
Both are affected.
Which one is initially affected?
White matter.
White matter, because you had a long track, that is a motor, your loss of motor milestones. Okay. So madam has already asked you about the age of onset. So initially the child has lost the motor milestones, then cognitive decline also. So which motor disorder or which this what is that white matter degenerative disorder you are thinking in this child?
MLD and
So what are the white matter disorder? How do you distinguish from the history or from the clinical findings? How do you distinguish whether it's a white matter or a gray matter?
White matter disorders they usually present with long track things like spasticity, like
Initially history,
history of motor,
loss of motor milestones
motor
first,
milestones.
here cognitive decline first. Second point.
There will be seizures in gray matter and cognitive decline in
Very
gray
good.
matter.
Seizures early in gray matter, usually myoclonic seizures. Whereas in white matter,
There won't be seizures, ma'am.
seizures will be, if at all, if they will be
later,
late, and if at all, if they will be generalized tonic-clonic seizures. Good. Third,
So white
these are all
matter
from the
basically-
history. Third, in the
So white matter basically will be upper motor signs with the progressive spasticity,
very
whereas gray matter will be convulsions and impairment. Yes.
And in the examination, what could be the other points to distinguish so that we can go to the examination and check whether this is a white matter or a gray matter?
Examination.
Madam
long
has
track
told you,
pencil.
no, long track signs will
Long
be
track
there.
pencil will be
That is
there.
pyramidal or cerebellum also can be involved. Extrapyramidal also can be involved. Yes.
And the fundus examination, optic
Good.
atrophy will be seen
Very
in
good,
white
very
matter
good.
disease.
White matter la optic atrophy, whereas in gray matter,
Pigmentary changes, retinitis pigmentosa.
RP. Anything else? Anything else? Most important. If you have
Cherry
such a
red
finding
spot.
from the ophthalmologist, then you will be thinking about something else.
Cherry red spot.
Very good, very good. Whenever there is a cherry red spot, then you will think in terms of a storage disorder. Is it not? Okay. And so these are the clinical clues for us to distinguish between a white matter and a gray matter disorder. And coming to a conclusion that it was a loss of early motor milestones and no history of seizures. So probably and history of quadriparesis, language disturbances, everything. So you are thinking in terms of a white matter disease in this particular case. Which type? According to the age of onset, it is the age of onset is 4 years. Okay.
4 years.
So probably an MLD.
MLD.
Okay. Probably an MLD. This is your inference from the history. Now go to your general examination.
Yes. On examination, the child is awake, is lying supine with shoulder in adduction, elbow inflection, and wrist in palm flexion. So is holding a toy, and hip inflection, adduction, and knee inflection, and ankle in neutral position. And was interacting with the mother by sounds. There is no pallor or icterus or edema or lymphadenopathy or cyanosis or clubbing. And vitals, temperature is 90.6 degree Fahrenheit, and pulse rate is 80 per minute. It is normal in rhythm, normal in volume, no specific character, felt in all peripheral pulses, and no radial or radiofemoral delay. And BP is 86 upon 50 millimeters of mercury, which is between 50th to 90th centile. And respiratory rate is 36 per minute, which is tachypnea, and it is thoracoabdominal type. And anthropometry, the child weighs 12 kg as against 16 kg, which is between -2 to -3 standard deviation. The child comes under underweight, and length is 90 centimeter as against 103 centimeter, which is less than -3 standard deviation, which is severe stunting. And weight for length is between 0 to -2 standard deviation, which is chronic malnutrition. And mid-arm circumference is 13 centimeter, which is normal. And head circumference is 45 centimeter, which is less than -3 standard deviation, suggesting microcephaly. And head to foot examination, head appears normal in shape and hair appears normal. There is no facial
Causes for
dysmorphia.
microcephaly? In this case,
There is
pertaining to this case, I am not asking the other causes.
Ma'am,
If it is a white matter disease, what are the leukodystrophies associated with the microcephaly?
Crab's disease.
Very good. Another one is a hypomyelinating disorder.
Pelizaeus-Merzbacher.
Very good. If it is a gray matter.
Gray matter, NCL, ma'am.
Very good.
And Rett syndrome.
Very good. Proceed.
And hair appears normal. There's no facial dysmorphism. Ears are normal and
For
eyes are
each
normal.
one, you can tell us what did you think about it and what are, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And hair appears normal in Menke-Kinke hair disease or biotinase deficiency. They can present with neurodegeneration. And
this is in the larger sphere. Okay, we are not taking a case of Menke or something like that. In this particular case, of course, if the hair is abnormal, you have to think about these conditions. Very good.
And facial dysmorphism, mucopolysaccharidosis or GM1 gangliosidosis can have
So whenever there is a facial dysmorphism, the first thing that has to come into our mind is MPS. The second one is GM1. Any other gray matter degenerative disorders in which there will be a dysmorphic faces?
Zellweger's.
Okay. Apart from GM1 and MPS? You have something called mucolipidosis, is it not?
Yes.
Anophydosis. All those things also will look like, or color phenotype will be there. Good. Next.
And
What will you look for in the eyes?
You
my
never mentioned, yes.
eyes look for cataract in case of Zellweger's or galactosemia, and or a cherry red spot in case of storage
Even
disorders.
cataract will be present in MPS, is it not?
Yes.
Before that, before
Cornealopathy.
looking for a cataract, you have to look for clouding of cornea.
Corneal.
Which type of MPS? There won't be clouding of cornea.
Hunters.
Good, very good. I appreciate you, my dear. Clouding of cornea will be there in any other conditions?
Mucolipidosis.
Very good. Cataract, you have told.
Yes,
Anything else?
Optic atrophy, and
that is from the fundus examination.
Fundus
You have to look for cherry red spot and optic atrophy and also RP. Suppose there is a CRS. What are the conditions that will come into your mind? That is cherry red spot.
GM1 gangliosidosis.
First of all, the first answer should be
Niemann-Pick.
no.
TS.
Cases must be the first thing. Okay. CRS will be present in 95% of the cases in Tay-Sachs disease. Okay. So Tay-Sachs should be the first answer, as madam told you. So GM2 should be the first answer. Number one is Tay-Sachs and another one is Tay-Sachs. Sandoff. Then only GM1. Okay. Proceed. So GM2, GM1.
Yes, ma'am.
Next.
And Niemann-Pick. Sialidosis.
Very good. Very good. Then.
But usually sialidosis, refsums and all come little
not common in
children. Yeah. So 5 to 15 years presentation means it's okay, but you are still in the 4 years. Okay, but now we are in differential diagnosis. We are not completed clinical examination. Yes, carry on.
And oral cavity to look for any oral thrush, since we are suspecting chronic infections.
Okay.
And chest deformities, dysostosise multiplexa in case of MPS.
Okay.
And trunk to look for kyphoscoliosis in case of MPS. And skin changes in biotinase deficiency. And hyperpigmentation in case of adrenoleukodystrophy and B12 deficiency, and hypopigmentation in case of phenylketonuria.
Hyperpigmentation is the skin and all will not be there in phenylketonuria, maybe in the hair.
And bed sores and contractures for the chronicity of the illness.
Okay.
And neurocutaneous markers.
Which neurocutaneous marker will you look for in a child with this neuroregression?
Tuberous sclerosis.
Mentioned as a prominent Mongolian spot. No prominent Mongolian spot. Okay.
No.
Suppose there were prominent Mongolian spots. What will be your differential diagnosis?
GM2 gangliosidosis.
GM1 or GM2?
GM1 gangliosidosis.
GM1. When will you consider a Mongolian spot as a prominent one or a persistent one or abnormal one? Everyone will be having a Mongolian spot. Is not any infant will have a Mongolian spot at birth. When will you consider that as a prominent and you will be thinking of GM1 in that particular case?
Anything to do with
Not
the size?
you will be seeing, yeah, madam is giving you a clue.
Anything to do with the size or the number? Again, how long?
Normally you will be seeing in the gluteal region. Suppose it is extensive over the ventral, over the dorsal part of the trunk, that is the in the dorsal region the back, or in that ventral part of the trunk. And if it is more blue in color, more deeper pigmentation is there. Okay. And if it persists beyond your infancy, then you consider it as a prominent Mongolian spot. And multiple, as madam has told. Next. Next.
And external markers of tuberculosis and HIV.
Okay. Next.
Examination of the nervous system. Higher functions. The child was a right-handed person, and child is awake, who is recognizing mother, and interacts by gestures and sounds. And there is motor aphasia, and there are no emotional disturbances or no sleep disturbances.
So
and
here also, Sivaranjani, 1 minute, sorry to interrupt. You say before the onset of progression, you say handedness, right-handed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Continue.
And cranial nerve examination, second cranial nerve, visual acuity, the child was able to fix and follow objects and was following light till 180 degree. And bilateral pupils were are equal and reacting to light, and fundi were normal. And extraocular movements were full, and there is no squint or nystagmus and no ptosis. And fifth cranial nerve, the sensations are normal over the face, and the child was able to chew food, and there's no deviation of jaw to any side, and jaw jerk is brisk. And seventh cranial, the child was able to close eyes tightly, and there was forehead wrinkling, and no deviation of angle of mouth. Nasolabial fold was present on both sides. And eighth cranial, the child was turned towards the sound, and the startled response present, which is not exaggerated, and the child responds to voice. And ninth and tenth cranial, there is uvula in midline, and soft palate moves equally on both sides, but it is weak, and there is pooling of secretions and gag reflex present. And child is able to turn head sideways, and there's no deviation of tongue, no fasciculations or fibrillations. And motor system, bulk is equal on both sides.
So now tell
and
me whether it is a pseudobulbar or a bulbar palsy, my dear.
Pseudobulbar.
Why do you say pseudobulbar?
Ma'am,
We had some two clinical clues to clinic, that is historical differences between pseudobulbar and bulbar. Now coming to the clinical findings, how will you distinguish between a pseudobulbar and bulbar? First of all, which one is UMN, which one is LMN?
pseudobulbar is UMN.
Very
Bulbar
good.
is LMN.
Bulbar is
And-
LMN. So you have, whenever there is an LMN involvement of the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th cranial nerves, you call it as a bulbar. Bulb is nothing but the medulla. So you have all the 4 nuclei situated in the medulla. That's why it is called bulbar palsy. When you say it is a pseudobulbar, it is a corticobulbar tracts. Every cranial nerve will be having a upper motor neuron fibers starting from the cerebral cortex. So if the corticobulbar tracts to these particular nuclei are involved, then you call it as a pseudobulbar. So 2 historical clues to distinguish these things we have already discussed. On examination, how will be the bulbar and how will be the pseudobulbar?
Ma'am, in pseudobulbar, there will be
Palatal movements will be diminished in both. I accept. Next, gag reflex and palatal reflex.
Gag reflex will be present and exaggerated in pseudobulbar, ma'am. It will be absent in bulbar, ma'am.
And there will be pooling of secretions will be there in
pseudobulbar.
Sorry, ma. Pooling of secretions will be there only in bulbar, my dear. Okay. Bulbar is a severe weakness. Pooling of secretions, you might have seen any number of GBS children while intubating, you must have witnessed the pooling of secretions, is it not? So it is a LMN. Okay. Bulbar palsy only you will have pooling of secretions. And the other thing to distinguish is your jaw jerk. When the jaw jerk is brisk or your facial jerk is brisk, then you call it as a pseudobulbar. Okay. Whenever there is a human involvement, then it will be associated pseudobulbar only. For example, in CP children, whenever there's all these things are there, then you it is a pseudobulbar involvement only. Okay. Now you have you understood the differences between pseudobulbar and bulbar?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Next.
Motor system, the bulk is normal on both sides, and there is no wasting. The tone, which is increased in all 4 limbs with spasticity of all 4 limbs, with lower limbs more than upper limbs. And power with neck, the child is able to turn sideways, and in supine and prone position, the child was able to lift off the bed. And abdominal muscle, the child was unable to get up from bed when given resistance at head and asked to get up. And trunk, the child was able to turn side by side. And upper limb power at shoulder, elbow, and wrist 3/5, with hand grip being weak, and lower limb at hip, knee, and ankle 3/5, with and toe grip being weak. And reflexes, superficial reflex, corneal conjunctival reflex present, and abdominal reflex is preserved, and pharyngeal palatal reflex present, and plantar reflex, bilateral extensor, and clemastic reflex present.
The order should be conjunctival, corneal, palatal, pharyngeal, abdominal, cremastic, and then lastly plantar.
Plantar.
Good.
And deep tendon reflexes, biceps it is 1+, and triceps it is 3+, and supinator is 3+, and knee jerk is 3+, and ankle jerk is 2+, and there is no clonus, and no release reflexes or no involuntary movements. Gait could not be assessed.
Very good.
And
whenever the reflexes are exaggerated, it is a must that you have to say clonus, whether there is a clonus or not. Very good.
And sensations
what
are
the release reflexes you look for?
Palmar and plantar grasp, glabellar tap, palmomental reflex,
Very good. Pharma mental is present or not?
No, ma'am,
Not
not
present. Usually
not
in
present.
degenerative disorders, these will be present, whether the glabella was accommodating or non-accommodating.
No.
Usually they will be non-accommodating. Okay, in all the degenerative disorders, all these release reflexes will be present. These are all these reflexes are they are all frontal lobe. They are under the control of the frontal lobe, but they are frontal lobe, or whenever there is a frontal lobe dysfunction, they will be there. Okay.
And cerebellum, there is no titubation or nystagmus, no pendular nature. On reaching for objects, there is no intentional tremors, and there is no signs of autonomic instability. And spine and cranium normal, and there is no signs of meningeal irritation.
Okay.
And other system examination, per abdomen, on inspection, which is normal in shape and not distended, no dilated veins. On palpation, it is soft, and liver was palpable 4 centimeter below right costal margin in the mid-clavicular line, and 3 centimeter below right costal margin in the anterior axillary line. Left lobe of liver is not palpable. It is firm in consistency, round in border, and smooth surface. And spleen was palpable 3 centimeter below left costal margin along its long axis. It's firm in consistency, and there's no free fluid, and liver span is 8 centimeters, and there is no shifting illness. And bowel sounds were here, and there's no bruit or venosum. Work of breathing is increased with subcostal and intercostal retractions with bilateral crepitations present. And cardiovascular system, apical impulse in the intercostal space on clavicular line with first and second hearts on being heard, and no murmur. And summary. This is a 4-year-old male child who is firstborn of non-consanguineous marriage, was a developmentally normal child with smooth neonatal period, with no significant family history, now brought with subacute onset of a progressive neurological illness, had an onset of 3 months back. Its history of quadriparesis affecting lower limb more than upper limb, with history of motor aphasia, with bladder and bowel involvement, with regurgitation of feeds associated with cough for the past 1 month. And on examination, we had microcephaly with spasticity of all 4 limbs and affecting lower limb more than upper limb, with motor aphasia, with pseudobulbar palsy affecting 9th and 10th, and with no extrapyramidal or cerebellar involvement, with hepatosplenomegaly, chronic malnutrition, and aspiration pneumonia. The findings was history of a neurodegenerative disorder involving both gray and white matter and associated with organomegaly.
So now, after the clinical findings, how your diagnosis, differential diagnosis, have changed? Now, can you tell me? Can you think about a new white matter degenerative disorder or leukodystrophy in this particular case? After examination findings, which finding tells you that it is not a white matter disease?
Speech.
No. Hepatosplenomegaly, organomegaly can never occur in a white matter or a leukodystrophy. So the point that the child is having, so after till our history, we were thinking about only 3 or 4 differential diagnoses. Either could it be a nutritional deficiency or a chronic infection, could it be toxic, or could it be a real neurodegenerative disorder? Among the degenerative disorder, because there was a loss of motor milestones, initially we were thinking in terms of leukodystrophy, and because of the age of onset, we were thinking in terms of metachromatic leukodystrophy. But after your clinical examination, you have quadriparesis, you have spastic quadriparesis, you have bipyramidal signs, all those things fit in with the white matter disease, and you have pseudobulbar palsy again fitting with. And about the bladder, what is the bladder and bowel involvement? What it could be? There are 5 types of bladder, is it not? Bladder involvement. Of course, for MDs, we okay. What could be the type of bladder in this particular case? Here there is a diffuse involvement of both the cerebral cortex, is it not? So it is an infantile bladder or an uninhibited bladder. Okay. Okay. So that is the explanation for the bladder involvement. Now, because there is a organomegaly, there is a hepatosplenomegaly, that white matter disease is ruled out. Okay. Now you have other differential diagnosis. Now you tell me what could be your differential diagnosis. Next slide.
Diagnosis of neurodegenerative disorder involving both gray and white matter with hepatosplenomegaly, aspiration pneumonia, and microcephaly and chronic malnutrition, probably due to chronic infections and GM1 gangliosidosis and Niemann-Pick's disease.
Okay. Madam.
So, say in that white and gray matter, what do you think it is more? With the spasticity, quadric spasticity, no seizures,
White matter disease.
white matter involvement is known with bulbar palsy. You think it's more of gray matter in white matter involvement?
With only motor involvement,
Mm.
with hepatosplenomegaly, we think it is gray matter.
Mm. So, but your clinical signs and history have some clues
Yes.
to white matter also.
Yes, ma'am.
So you are basically thinking like it is predominantly white matter, but because of the hepatosplenomegaly, it is also gray matter involvement. So
Yes,
with your history of onset of insidious onset, disease occurring in the 4 years of age,
Yes,
with spasticity, regression which is progressive regression, and no seizures with speech involvement and hepatosplenomegaly. And of course, this aspiration pneumonia, microcephaly, malnutrition are all secondary to that. But microcephaly, you have to take it in mind. Why? Yes.
Etiology, with the gray matter diseases, neuronal lipofuscinosis which can present, and Rett syndrome, and
So can you name any disorder where there's a predominantly white matter with the macrocephaly?
Alexander and Kenneman's.
Okay, Alexander and Kenneman's. Right. Okay. You are thinking of chronic infections. What are the infections you thought of? Because there is no history of any fever or any history of contact. If at all, what are the things? Sometimes they miss in the history given by the parents. So what infections you thought of? Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis, neuronal tuberculosis to present to you with the regression of milestones is usually not a regression of milestones. Okay, any other infections?
HIV encephalopathy.
HIV encephalopathy. Okay, HIV encephalopathy we have to think of. But both parents are being normal, and then that also again. But by history alone, we have not done any investigations. We can take HIV encephalopathy as anything. Could it be due to herpes viral infections?
Can be.
Can be due to herpes viral infection. So now with this, you have only 3. So any few investigations you want to do, or any more further differential diagnosis do you have with this?
Was there any history of recurrent diarrhea or recurrent skin infections or recurrent respiratory tract infections, my dear?
No, ma'am, not so.
No. Okay. Then nutritional and toxic, whether any occupation of the parent tells you that there could be a toxic exposure, like a paint, or the father is a painter, or the child is exposed to any history of pica, all those things you have to say in the history. Okay. Is there from the occupation of the patient parent you could find out whether it could be a toxic?
He's a construction worker.
Only. Okay. So
then also you have to take like construction workers. Many a time they live along with they take the children, and they are migrant workers. They allow the children to play by the side where everything is kept. So we have to be very specific whether the child also is living in the construction site. Because they have
nutritional.
Nutritional.
You said all this stunting, severe stunting, everything is under less than 2 some such score. Was it not?
Yes, ma'am. Nutrition.
Could it be chronic malnutrition? That madam only has to say whether it could fit in with or not.
Chronic malnutrition without any other things presenting primarily as neurological is not an issue. Usually they present with some other problems like anemia and all. Primarily presenting as neurological problem, probably it is a B12 deficiency, and for that the child's age is younger age group. But then also we have to think about that, but it won't come as your first differential diagnosis. Because
of course, as madam has put it as B12 deficiency can have a regression, can present as a developmental delay, seizures, then your developmental regression. And we know the Pratt-Whittle syndrome, that infantile tremor syndrome, following any infection, they can have such a tremorlessness, would have lost all the milestones, head control, etc., ability to sit and all. So infantile tremor syndrome, all those things can be there. But Of course, as madam has put it us, so there is no hyperpigmentation of the knuckles, there is no hyperpigmentation of the palms and soles. And of course, and another important point is the child is having a hepatosplenomegaly, is it not? So how to include that also in the diagnosis with vitamin B12 deficiency? So that is again a problem. Okay, pure leukodystrophy is also no leukodystrophy will have a organomegaly. Okay, so now after the finding of organomegaly, we have to rule out that pure leukodystrophy, and we have to think about only the combined things, both gray and white matter. As you have nicely put it as, probably it is a late onset or your GM1 or a GM2 gangliosidosis, even Gaucher, juvenile Gaucher, or your Niemann-Pick C. That also I can accept. Now thinking about these chronic infections, again you are thinking as a possibility, because before branding it as a neurodegenerative, you want to rule out either it could be a treatable or not, you want to see. I do accept that. Now coming to the gangliosidosis or Niemann-Pick C, whether there are any additional clues, anything else you have to look for in the clinical examination. Whether it is a GM2, you have put it as GM2. Can you say that it is a juvenile Tay Sachs? Yes or no? Fast.
Ma'am, couldn't hear.
Yes or no?
Ma'am, question GM2.
Question. GM2 has two diseases, is it not? Tay Sachs and Sandow.
Yes.
Can this be a Tay Sachs?
No, ma'am.
Tay Sachs, I am telling.
No, ma'am. There is no, or there will not be organomegaly.
That should be your first answer, immediate answer. Okay. All these storage disorders can have hepatosplenomegaly except Tay Sachs. Tay Sachs cannot have hepatosplenomegaly. If there is a hepatosplenomegaly, then this should be a Sandow. Okay. So could it be a Sandow, or it could be a GM1 or an Niemann-Pick, even a Gaucher also. Of course, there is no splenohepatomegaly, there is a hepatosplenomegaly. Okay. Now, can any other clinical examination, any other pointer to say? See, I will tell you. In juvenile Gaucher, there will be a horizontal gaze palsy. In Niemann-Pick C, there will be, the presentation will be predominantly extrapyramidal and ataxia. Of course, pyramidal will be there. And additionally, there will be a vertical gaze palsy. Okay. So these are the 2 points you have to remember in your clinical examination. Gaucher, juvenile Gaucher, it is horizontal. Whereas in Niemann-Pick C, it is vertical. Okay. Just 2 points. Okay. Go ahead. Now, how are you going to investigate this case?
I'd like to proceed with the investigations, like routine investigations, complete blood count.
Nothing is routine, my dear.
See, time and again we have told, like, don't use the words like routine. Coming to the hospital is routine for us because you've taken medicine as a profession, but not for the child. Nothing is routine for them. So you don't use such words. And that too, as a postgraduate, please refine your terminologies. You say, I want to do a blood count to see whether there is any anemia because I'm suspecting B12 deficiency. You want to see the type of anemia. You proceed like that, okay? Yeah.
Even in private practice, there is no routine investigation.
Yeah. Each comes with a cost. So everything, whichever thing we are ordering, we must know what for we are ordering, what are we going to look for. Yes.
Like do a complete blood count, look for hemoglobin, look for anemia in case of like B12 deficiency, or in juvenile Gauchers, there can be anemia with the thrombocytopenia, and look for total count. Since we are suspecting chronic infections, there can be leukocytosis also, and or leukopenia even, and to look for platelets. For thrombocytopenia in case of Gauchers and Niemann-Picks, and Gauchers, and in chronic infections also. And since the child has got hepatosplenomegaly, I would like to do
anything in the peripheral smear.
Yes, ma'am. In peripheral smear, we have to look for vacuolated lymphocytes. Good. In case of GM1 gangliosidosis, or Gauchers or Niemann-Picks, and
fine, good. Answer is correct. Proceed.
And since the child has got hepatosplenomegaly, I'd like to do a liver function test, since they can also be deranged in case of Gauchers or Niemann-Picks or GM1 gangliosidosis, and even chronic infections.
Yes.
Anything more you want to see? Any imaging?
Neuro,
What's the
ultrasound
cost?
abdomen to look for
Documenting
and neuroimaging, MRI brain with MR spectroscopy and
No, in the blood itself, if it is a juvenile Gaucher, anything, any other enzyme?
blood.
enzyme analysis has to be done.
That is for DBS. I am asking you, Gaucher, any other enzyme? Acid phosphatase will be elevated, okay? Acid phosphatase. And in the urine, you have to go for anything like your sulfatides for mucopolysaccharidosis or oligosaccharides, you can look for, but these are things are not readily available. Okay, anything else? Before going for MRI, such things, anything else? You have put it as GM1. So what else will you do? You have look for vacuolated lymphocytes in the peripheral smear. Anything else? Won't you do a skeletal survey, my dear? What will you look for in the skeletal smear, skeletal survey? Sorry.
Beaking of vertebra.
Very good. What is that called? What are the radiological features of MPS are called?
Dysostrosis multiplex.
Very good. Very good. Dysostrosis multiplex you have to look for, and GM1 like dysostrosis. And even in manosidosis, fucosidosis, all those things also. Mucolipidosis also will have a skeletal survey will show you the dysostrosis multiplex. Any other investigations? Madam has told you about ultrasonogram abdomen. Anything else? Any other thing? Will you do a bone marrow?
Bone marrow.
Will it be helpful? What will you look for in the bone marrow?
Gauchers and Niemann-Pick's, it will be useful.
Yeah. Tell me the findings. How will you distinguish between a Gaucher cell and a Niemann-Pick cell?
In Gaucher, there will be crumpled tissue paper appearance, and in Niemann-Pick spongy
What is that Niemann-Pick cell is called?
T-blue histiocytes.
Very good. What the Gaucher cell will be? Which is stain positive? Which is stain positive?
PAS positive, pyrotic acid shift positive.
PAS positive is Gaucher cell, whereas C-blue histiocytes?
Niemann-Pick.
That PA is negative, which stain is positive?
Alcian do.
No, my dear. Sudan black. Okay. So Gaucher cell, PAS positive, and you have the cytoplasm crinkled paper or wrinkled paper or crumpy tissue paper. Whereas here Niemann-Pick cell is PAS negative, Sudan black positive. Okay, right. Any other investigation? Any other thing?
Bera, EG and Bera.
Okay. VEP, Bera and all. Additionally, you have to ophthalmologist examination is very much essential to look for any optic atrophy or cherry red spot. In a GM1, GM2, Niemann-Pick, you can see cherry red spot, but not in Gaucher. Okay. Next. Next,
nerve conduction study to look for peripheral nerve involvement.
In these conditions, in these four, those will be useful only for leukodystrophies. Now we are considering only these four conditions. Time will not permit us to consider everything or discuss everything.
Rule out infections like TB workup and VCTC to rule out.
VCTC, retroviral screening, you will be going for. Yes. Any other thing? You said MRI brain. In what way it is going to help you? Or what do you look for, or what are you going to expect in an MRI brain? Why do you want MRI brain in this case?
To look for the pattern recognition in case of white matter.
Here you are considering only these four diagnoses, is it no?
Yes.
It will be useful for leukodystrophy, very good. But here there will be only a cortical atrophy or some white matter changes, we can't say. Okay, that will be a non-specific changes only, but not a specific things for these conditions. Of course, as you said, it will be useful for the white matter degenerative disorder. Good. And can you tell me in each condition what will be the typical white matter, typical MRI picture in each leukodystrophy? Fast.
From anterior to posterior, Alexander will have frontal involvement, and posterior predominantly involved in adenoleukodystrophy, where parieto-occipital lobe is involved, and there will be contrast enhancement in ALD. and periventricular involvement in metachromatic leukodystrophy.
That should be the first. Metachromatic leukodystrophy is the commonest thing which you come across. Alexander's, it's a very rare thing. So periventricular, bilateral, symmetrical, periventricular, butterfly-shaped pattern, white matter involvement is
And
MLD. Posterior predominant parieto-occipital, either it could be Krabbe or ALD, adrenoleukodystrophy. By giving a contrast, if there is a contrast enhancement, then it is ALD. If there is no contrast enhancement, then it could be Krabbe. Anterior involvement, of course, you have said it could be Alexander. Very good. So in a gray matter degenerative disease, it may not be much useful because all those things are non-specific changes, maybe an atrophy or here and there some white matter changes may be there. Yes. There can be even cerebellar atrophy. So,
can I ask a question, madam? I am Srinivasan. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
No, there is hepatosplenomegaly. It's okay. If it is not there, EEG is important or not in such a case? Would you like to consider EEG as a...
Definitely, sir. When if there is no hepatosplenomegaly, I would do an EEG only for looking for periodic complexes to find out whether it is SSP or not. Sometimes the myoclonic jerks may not be there. Suppose the child has come in the stage 3, we cannot have the myoclonic
That's
seizure.
why I asked that question.
Yeah.
Because here
In the very early stage also, in stage 1 as well as in stage 3, stage 4, we can't have myoclonic seizures. When the myoclonic seizures are present, it is stage 2. At that time only we can clinically diagnose it is an SSPE. So in the very early stage as well as in the very late stages, we have to go by the EEG only. So EEG we will do, sir. We are not considering that one, most probably because of this hepatosplenomegaly. That doesn't go that because of that. Of course, we have to do. Yes, please. Any specific enzymes, Kanna?
Enzyme studies.
Yes.
So what will be your
enzyme analysis?
How to confirm the disease? What it could be? So you have narrowed down to 4 diagnoses. You have to come to a conclusion, finalize or confirm whether it is GM1 or G2, GM2 like that. Yes, no?
With the enzyme assay, we can confirm and mutation genetic studies has to be done in case of Niemann-Pick type C, ma'am. All others, all other 3
That's what I expected from you, my dear. So enzyme assay you will be doing for GM1, GM2, etc., Gaucher, etc. Niemann-Pick type A and type B, whereas type C is entirely a different disorder. Is it not? Yes. It is due to defective cholesterol esterification. It is not due to the enzyme deficiency. So for that, you have to go for mutation analysis only. Very good. Okay. Madam.
So, see, basically, how will this child end up with, how will be the progression of the disease? Because ultimately the mother will ask you, what will happen to my child? How will you answer this for the mother?
Depending on the cause, if it is treatable, you can reassure, ma'am. Otherwise, we have to, most of these degenerative disorders have only guarded prognosis. And we can support.
And have limited therapy options. But what will be the goal in any of these neurodegenerative disorders management?
Their quality of life should be improved with supportive care. Mainly in the form of physiotherapy and preventing further deterioration. We can give for a few conditions we have treatments, like enzyme replacement therapy, but it is not easily available, ma'am. And okay. Bone marrow transplant.
Bone marrow transplant. What is the role of bone marrow? That's what I wanted to ask. What is the role of bone marrow transplant for all these neurodegenerative disorders? Hello. Yes. Any diseases which are better or they can change with the bone marrow transplant?
In Gaucher and Niemann-Pick, we can in the MPS they have tried we have tried bone marrow transplantation, which has good but even neurological this if pre-symptomatic it will be helpful, but neurological disease won't revert with this.
Okay, right. What advice will you tell the mother on discharging the child apart from this basic physiotherapy and all? Any genetic counseling you have to give, because this
Yes,
has one.
Yes, ma'am.
Affected and one more child.
Yes, ma'am. One more child is there.
Yes.
since many of these conditions are inherited, they can, and most of them are autosomal recessive, they can have a 25% risk of inheriting. So we have to advise regarding prenatal diagnosis also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or what do you mean by prenatal? Before close, what do you mean by prenatal diagnosis?
Ma'am,
Measures.
yes, ma'am. By chorionic villus sampling or amniocentesis, if previously affected sibling is there, we can advise them. By 9 to 11 weeks, we can go for enzyme analysis in that, ma'am, or even genetic analysis can be done in that.
So
And
by that, what are the diseases in which you have thought of can be found out? GM1, yes.
ma'am, Gaucher, Niemann, Pick's,
Gaucher and Niemann Pick's can be picked out by
prenatal
prenatal diagnosis. Yes. Yes, Lima. I think our Srinivasan sir can
management, my dear. So you have to say, first of all, symptomatic or supportive care, starting with your, what are all the problems this particular child is having? This particular child is having an LRI or pulmonary infection, anemia, malnutrition, all those things. And child has a spastic quadriparesis, so you can provide her anti-spasticity treatment. If there is an extrapyramidal movement disorder like dystonia also, you can try hexafenadil, clonazepam, baclofen, something like that. And of course, physiotherapy, occupational therapy to prevent contractures. And the child is having a pseudobulbar involvement. So child is having a feeding difficulty. Probably the chronic stunting, everything is due to that. Child is not able to feed properly. So you have to advise the mother regarding feeding practices, how to feed. And if the child has recurrent aspirations, then you have to put the child on NG tube feeding. So all those things, if the child is still NG tube is not able to, then you can go for even
feeding gastrostomy.
So all these things we expect from you, my dear, as a pediatrician.
Madam, Dr. Palniraman has asked whether the diagnosis has been confirmed by any investigation. So,
sir, finally, madam will be telling you, sir.
She
will tell you,
sir. Palniraman coming in and the posting is.
She will unravel the mystery, sir. Definitely, sir. And so it is the supportive care and the symptomatic care. Suppose the child is having seizures, you can give anti-seizure medication also. Okay, that is for your supportive care. And coming to the specific care or specific treatment, you have to say whatever maybe we have gone down to some 3 or 4 diagnoses. Okay, so you have to say enzyme replacement therapy is available for such and such a disorder. What are the disorders for which ERT is available? Enumerate.
Gauchers and imiglucerase, valaglucerase.
I am not asking you the enzyme and all. You tell me the diseases name of the disease.
Treatment.
And
name of the diseases for which ART is available. That's all.
Gauchers, Niemann Pick's.
Niemann Pick available, Kanna?
To some extent, miglustat can.
No, now we are asking ERT only. We are not have gone to substrate reduction. ERT is available, as you said, Gaucher. Very good. Pompies. Next. 6 diseases you have to tell me. Fabry. Good. MPS 1, 4, 6. Okay. So these are these 6 disorders you have to enumerate. MPS 1, Barsky. Okay, Koehler-Barsky. Then type 4, type 6. Then Gauchers, Pompies, and Fabry. For all these things, ERT is available. And you have to then immediately we will ask you how will you or educate the parents, what are after ERT, what and all, which problems will improve, what will be the prognosis, like that we will be asking. Tell me. Will every manifestation will revert?
No, ma'am. Neurological manifestations will not revert.
Hematological, good. Hematological and visceral manifestations will improve. Skeletal manifestations will stabilize, and neurological involvement will not improve. That has to be importantly told to the parents. So neurological manifestations will not improve, and they will continue to progress. Okay, because all these enzymes, they cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. That is the reason. So this has to be well informed to the parents prior starting this ERT. That's why when the child is having so much of CNS involvement, they are not choosing ERT. And next one is substrate reduction therapy, miglustat. It can be given for those who cannot be go for ERT. You can give them for Gaucher as well as for Niemann Pick. Okay, and BMT can be done even for ALD and MLD. asymptomatic,
Pre-symptomatic.
pre-symptomatic children. So suppose the elder sibling has been confirmed MLD or ALD and next SIB, pre-symptomatic phase itself, if you do a BMT, it is a cure. It is a cure. Okay. So that you have to know. So these are the treatment modalities available for these conditions. Okay. But anything else? Any other, your co-PG, anything else you want from us, madam?
Done a good job, madam. I appreciate the candidate. And
Sivaranjani, do you have
initially she
the
was looking
final
tense.
report?
Initially she was looking tense. I made a remark, but her presentation was very coherent, and
Very
she
good.
answered most of your questions. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And again, it's proved like Lima is a very good teacher.
Madam, what is that, madam? Any other? Only two more questions I have to ask you, my dear. What is
Given
the
to her.
explanation for CRS? Cherrett spot. What is the explanation? Why do you see Cherrett spot? What will it be look like?
It is due to the deposition of the ganglioside in the ganglioside layer of the retina, and it is devoid in the area of macula. So fovea will be visible through that.
Not fovea. Underlying choroid will be visible
underlying
through the fovea. Fovea
fovea.
lacks any ganglion cells.
Ganglion cell
So
layer.
these gangliosides cannot accumulate there. So because of the loss of transparency of the entire periphery of the retina, and through the fovea, you are seeing the underlying choroid. That is the cherry red spot. Okay, very good. What are the causes for abnormal snuttle?
Tay-Sachs.
If it is there, fast. The next presenter, the next persons have come, I think. GM2 next. GM1 where for abnormal snuttle. Krabbe's and pyridoxine dependency. These are the four conditions which can have abnormal snuttle. Can you distinguish between a normal snuttle and an abnormal snuttle? Normal snuttle is a flexor response, whereas an abnormal snuttle is an extensor response. Okay, and there will be a quick adaptation to multiple trials in a normal snuttle, whereas there won't be adapting. This abnormal snuttle will not be adapting. Okay, these are the two questions we wish to ask you in whenever you are presenting a degenerative disorder. Very good.
Distinction, is it?
Yes, sir. Now you can unravel the mystery, my dear.
Sivaranjani, give that investigations, whatever you have got.
Investigations, we have done complete blood count, which was normal initially, and further when we repeated for some investigations, we found that it was anemia and thrombocytopenia and leukopenia, and liver function test was normal completely, and we have showed a hypergammaglobulinemia, and we proceeded for MRI brain, which showed diffuse cerebral atrophy, and since there is pancytopenia along with hypergammaglobulinemia, we thought of HIV, and we had done VCTC, which turned to be positive, and retrospectively we done for both parents, who also turned to be positive. We diagnosed the case as HIV encephalopathy.
Very good, nice presentation, my dear.
So prominent in this thing, HIV infection.
No, sir. Actually, we are seeing HIV encephalopathy presenting exclusively as encephalopathy is the first time we are getting like this, sir.
Yeah. Hepatosplenomegaly seems to be a little unusual. Yeah, such a this thing. Yeah, good, but a very interesting case. Yeah.
Madam,
but HIV is a greater masquerader, no, sir. Once we had a child with a spastic diplegia, and the child turned out to be under the tendo Achilles contracture. The child went to a hospital for to an orthopedician for tendo Achilles that contracture release. Then they did as a pre-surgical thing. They did HIV, and it turned out to be positive, and they sent to the child.
But parents are totally asymptomatic, is it?
Yes.
They were not aware of it.
They were not aware of it.
Okay.
Madam, can you see the chat box if you don't mind, because a lot of questions asked.
Yes, sir. Most of the things it has been already answered, sir.
Okay.
Except that 13 centimeters.
Somebody has asked 13 centimeters.
13 centimeters, but this is because.
That is one thing which may suggest a congenital infection like Zika, and of course here it's not there. Yeah.
And chronic malnutrition, both because it is 13 centimeter. It's not norm because what she probably meant was that it was not asymmetrical. It's symmetrically, it is there 13 centimeter because of the malnutrition.
Malnutrition.
Yes, upper midam circumference.
I think.
I think it's like next case it has to
Yeah,
start.
very good, madam. Very nice
We have to do the
discussion.
closing,
Excellent
Okay,
discussion.
Sivaranjani, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah. I think it's
and I-
excellent discussion, excellent way it is gone, and a lot of people are benefited, and it is very good discussion. And I never expected that is HIV encephalopathy. I was thinking something neurodegenerative disorder. Okay, it suddenly surprised us after listening all the things.
Every time we learn something new.
Yeah. That's true. That's true,
And
sir.
especially
Always.
with Dr. Rima, Pauline, and Bhuma, we learned a lot more today. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
And-
Lima.
Excellent case presentation by Sivaranjani and an excellent academic feast by Lima Pauline madam and Bhuma madam. Both of them were really, they catered to the academic hunger of all the students and the faculties, whoever have registered. Sir KNR sir, should we move on to the vaccine?
Yeah. And you move on to the
Clippings
vaccines for you, clippings for 15
On
minutes.
behalf of
And then,
IAPCCB, I thank Professor Lima Pauline madam and Professor Bhuma madam for their excellent deliberation. Now we are moving on to the clippings on vaccine.